In the darkness of the Louisiana bayou, she dug a grave, not for an enemy, but for her own twin sister. Unconscious, helpless, buried alive by pure jealousy. This wasn't an accident. This was envy. A sister willing to bury blood just to steal a life that was never hers. She thought the swamp would hide her secret, but fate was watching. And what happened next would expose the truth in ways she never imagined. This is the story of two sisters, two faces, two hearts, but only one destiny. Stay with me until the very end, because what you're about to hear will shake you to your core. And before we begin, if you love stories about karma, justice, and the power of truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will leave you speechless. 26 years ago, in the small town of Blessington, Louisiana, a place where Spanish moss hung heavy from ancient oak trees and gospel music floated through screen doors every Sunday morning, something extraordinary happened. The town was known for two things: its deep spiritual roots and its close-knit African-American community that had stood strong for generations. Everybody knew everybody. Secrets didn't last long. But what happened on that stormy September night would become the town's most whispered legend. Mama Lorraine Robinson, the daughter of the town's beloved midwife, was about to give birth. She was married to James Robinson, a hard-working man who worked at the local timber mill. Their small house sat at the edge of town, near the bayou, where the crickets sang loud and the fireflies danced every evening. That night, the sky split open with thunder so loud it rattled the windows. Rain poured down in sheets, flooding the dirt roads and turning them into rivers of mud. Sister Margaret, the town's current midwife, rushed through the storm with her medical bag, her umbrella fighting against the wind. Behind her came Mama Lorraine's mother, Grandma Ruth, and two neighbor women who had delivered babies before. They burst through the door, shaking off water, ready to help bring new life into the world. James paced in the living room, his hands clasped in prayer, his Bible open on the coffee table. The whole house smelled of lavender oil and burning sage, traditions passed down through generations to protect mother and child during birth. The women worked quickly, boiling water, laying out clean towels, preparing the bedroom. Mama Lorraine lay in bed, her face glistening with sweat, her breathing heavy but controlled. She had been in labor for hours. Then, at exactly 11:47 p.m., something miraculous happened. The thunder stopped. The rain paused. The wind fell silent. In that moment of perfect stillness, the first baby arrived. A beautiful baby girl with smooth, dark skin and the calmest eyes anyone had ever seen. She didn't cry immediately. She just blinked slowly, looking around as if observing this new world with curiosity and peace. Sister Margaret lifted her gently, tears forming in her eyes. "Lord, have mercy," she whispered. "This child came with peace. Look at her face, calm like still water at dawn." The baby made soft cooing sounds, her tiny fingers unclenching slowly. Grandma Ruth took one look at her and smiled. "This one carries blessing," she said quietly. They wrapped her in a soft yellow blanket and laid her in Mama Lorraine's arms. "We'll call her Grace," Mama Lorraine whispered, kissing her forehead. "Grace Lorraine Robinson." But the peace didn't last. Only 3 minutes later, at 11:50 p.m., the storm returned with violent fury. Lightning cracked across the sky so bright it lit up the entire room. Thunder exploded like a cannon. The windows rattled violently. And in that chaos, the second baby arrived, screaming at the top of her lungs, her tiny fists clenched tight, her face twisted in what looked like anger. Sister Margaret caught her, shocked by the force of her cries. This baby fought everything, the blanket, the hands trying to clean her, even the air itself. Her cries were so loud they could be heard over the thunder. "Jesus, protect us," Sister Margaret muttered, struggling to calm her. "This one came fighting like she's already got a battle to win." They wrapped her in a green blanket and placed her next to Grace. The contrast was immediate and unsettling. Grace lay still, peaceful, watching her sister with innocent eyes. But the second twin, she kept crying, squirming, her little face red with fury. "We'll call her Jade," James said from the doorway, his voice uncertain. "Jade Marie Robinson." Grandma Ruth stared at both babies, her face troubled. She had delivered hundreds of babies in her lifetime, but she had never seen twins so different from the moment of birth. She pulled Sister Margaret aside and whispered urgently, "These twins were born under a split sky. One came with the calm, the other came with the storm. Mark my words. These girls will carry divided destinies. One will walk in light, the other will chase it." Sister Margaret frowned. "What are you saying, Ruth?" Grandma Ruth's voice dropped even lower. "I'm saying we need to pray over them, especially the second one. I've seen this before, many years ago. Twins born this way, one will always feel like they're standing in the other's shadow. And envy, if it takes root early, it grows teeth." The women gathered around the bed and prayed, their hands raised, their voices joining together in an old spiritual song that had been sung in that town for over 100 years. But even as they prayed, baby Jade screamed louder, as if rejecting the blessing. That night, the town elders would later say, was the night destiny marked two paths, one of grace, one of jealousy. And both would collide in a way no one could predict. The years passed like pages turning in a book, each one revealing more about who these twins would become. Grace grew like a flower opening slowly to the sun. She was gentle, soft-spoken, always smiling. By the time she was 5 years old, she was already helping her mother around the house without being asked. She would sweep the porch, water the plants, and sing little songs while she worked. Her voice, even as a child, was beautiful, pure and clear like a bell. Jade, on the other hand, grew like a storm that never fully settled. She was loud, impatient, always wanting things immediately. If Grace got a compliment, Jade's face would tighten. If Grace was praised, Jade would find a reason to act out. She wasn't a bad child, not at all, but there was something restless inside her, something that made her feel like she was always in competition, even when there was no race to run. Mama Lorraine noticed it early. She would watch Jade stare at Grace with an expression that made her heart uneasy. It wasn't the loving gaze of a sister. It was something sharper, something darker. One Sunday morning, when the girls were 7 years old, Grace sang a solo in the children's choir at Blessington Baptist Church. Her voice soared through the sanctuary, and by the end the entire congregation was on their feet, clapping and praising God. Mama Lorraine turned to hug Jade, expecting her to be proud of her sister. But Jade sat frozen in the pew, her jaw clenched, her hands balled into fists. Her eyes glistened, not with pride, but with tears of frustration. "Jade, baby, what's wrong?" Mama Lorraine whispered. Jade turned away sharply. "Nothing," she muttered. But it wasn't nothing, and Mama Lorraine knew it. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Mama Lorraine heard voices coming from the girls' shared bedroom. She walked quietly down the hallway and pressed her ear to the door. It was Jade talking to herself, or so it seemed. "Why does everyone love her more?" Jade whispered harshly. "Why is she always the one they see? I'm here too. I'm here too." There was a pause. Then Jade laughed, but it wasn't a child's laugh. It was cold, bitter, too old for a 7-year-old. Mama Lorraine pushed the door open gently. Jade was sitting on the floor in the dark, staring at her reflection in the small mirror they kept on the dresser. Grace was asleep in her bed, completely unaware. "Jade, baby, who are you talking to?" Mama Lorraine asked softly, kneeling beside her. Jade jumped, startled, then quickly forced a smile. "Nobody, Mama. Just playing." But her eyes said something else. They said she wasn't playing at all. From that day forward, Mama Lorraine prayed harder over Jade. She took her to church more often. She bathed her with special oils that Grandma Ruth made from blessed herbs. She tied red thread bracelets around her wrists, an old tradition meant to ward off jealousy and evil spirits. She even took her to see Pastor Williams, who laid hands on her and prayed fervently. But nothing seemed to soften the hardness growing inside Jade's heart. Grace, oblivious to all of this, loved her sister deeply. She would share her toys, her snacks, her clothes. She would braid Jade's hair and tell her she was beautiful. She would try to include her in everything. But Jade rarely smiled back. Instead, she would watch Grace with quiet intensity, as if studying her, as if waiting for something. The teenage years made everything worse. Grace blossomed into a stunning young woman. Her beauty wasn't just physical, it radiated from within. She was kind to everyone, volunteered at the church food bank, tutored younger kids after school, and sang in the choir every Sunday. People in town would stop Mama Lorraine on the street just to say, "Your Grace is such a blessing. You raised her right." Jade heard every word. Every compliment aimed at Grace felt like a knife to her chest. She tried to be like Grace, she really did. She volunteered too, but people said she seemed forced. She tried to sing, but her voice was average. She tried to be kind, but it came across as fake. It was as if, no matter what Jade did, Grace's light was too bright, and Jade would always be standing in her shadow. By the time they turned 26, the distance between them had grown into a canyon. They still lived in the same house, still shared the same space, but emotionally, they were worlds apart. Grace worked as a teacher at Blessington Elementary School, loved by every student and parent. Jade worked at the town's grocery store, a job she resented because she felt it was beneath her. And then everything changed. One Sunday morning in late spring, a man walked into Blessington Baptist Church. His name was Marcus Wellington, and he wasn't from around there. He was a successful businessman from Atlanta, in town for a 3-month community development project aimed at bringing new resources and jobs to small towns across the South. Marcus was tall, well-dressed, confident, and handsome. He had the kind of presence that made people turn and look. He sat in the back row that first Sunday, just observing. But when Grace stood up to sing her solo, a gospel rendition of "His Eye is on the Sparrow," Marcus froze. Her voice wrapped around the room like warm honey, and her face glowed with genuine joy. By the time she finished, Marcus knew he had to meet her. After the service, he approached Pastor Williams and asked about her. "That's Grace Robinson," the pastor said with a proud smile. "One of the finest young women in this town. Pure heart, that one." Marcus made it his mission to meet her properly. He attended every church service, every community event. He introduced himself to her family, to Mama Lorraine and James, and made his intentions clear from the start. "I'm interested in your daughter, Mrs. Robinson. With your permission, I'd like to court her the right way." Mama Lorraine was impressed by his respect and his manners. James approved too. And Grace, sweet Grace, blushed every time Marcus smiled at her. Within 2 months, the entire town was talking about Grace and Marcus. They were the perfect couple. He treated her like a queen, bringing her flowers, taking her to nice dinners in the city, calling her every night. Grace glowed with happiness. She would come home and tell Jade all about it, not to brag, but because she genuinely wanted to share her joy with her sister. But Jade didn't want to hear it. Every word Grace said felt like acid in her ears. Every smile Marcus gave Grace felt like a slap to Jade's face. One evening, Jade stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. She and Grace were identical twins. Same face, same body, same everything. So why did Marcus choose Grace? Why did everyone always choose Grace? "It's not fair," Jade whispered to her reflection. Her eyes darkened. Her fists clenched. "Why does she get everything? Why do I always get nothing?" Her reflection seemed to whisper back, and for a moment Jade could have sworn she saw something else in her eyes. Something cold. Something that had been waiting for years to finally surface. Then came the announcement that shattered Jade completely. One Sunday after church, Marcus stood up in front of the entire congregation, took Grace's hand and said, "I want everyone here to witness this moment. Grace Robinson, you are the most incredible woman I have ever met. Will you marry me?" He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it, and inside was a diamond ring that sparkled under the church lights. Grace gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Marcus, yes." The church erupted in applause. People rushed forward to congratulate them. Mama Lorraine cried tears of joy. James hugged Marcus like a son. Even Grandma Ruth, now elderly and frail, clapped her hands slowly, a soft smile on her face. But in the back of the church, standing alone near the door, was Jade. Her face was stone. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands shook. She watched as everyone surrounded Grace, celebrating, hugging, laughing. No one even looked her way. No one noticed the storm building inside her. And in that moment, something inside Jade snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a rope pulled too tight finally breaking. That night, Jade couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Grace hum happily in the next room as she tried on the ring over and over again. Jade's jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. Her mind raced with dark thoughts, thoughts she had never allowed herself to fully entertain before. But now they flooded in like a dam breaking. "Why should she have everything?" Jade whispered into the darkness. "She's not better than me. We're the same face, the same blood. But she gets the love, the praise, the perfect man, the perfect life." Jade sat up slowly, her heart pounding. What if she just wasn't here? The thought terrified her at first. She shook her head, trying to push it away. But it kept coming back, louder, stronger, more insistent. If she wasn't here, Marcus would see me. Everyone would see me. I could be her. I could have her life. Jade's breathing quickened. Her hands trembled. I could take her place. We look exactly the same. No one would know. The next morning, Jade woke up with a plan. A terrible, evil plan. But in her twisted mind, it made perfect sense. She had spent 26 years being invisible, being second, being the shadow. Not anymore. If Grace wouldn't step aside willingly, then Jade would make her disappear. For the next 3 days, Jade watched Grace carefully. She studied her routine, her habits, where she went and when. Grace had a tradition, passed down from Grandma Ruth, that every time something major happened in her life, she would go to their late grandmother's garden, deep near the edge of the bayou, to pray and gather wildflowers. It was a sacred, private ritual. Grace always went alone at dawn. Jade knew this was her chance. The morning after Marcus officially asked James for Grace's hand in marriage, Jade woke up at 4:30 a.m. She dressed in dark clothes, grabbed a shovel from the shed, and waited. At 5:15 a.m., just as the sun started to peek over the horizon, Grace left the house quietly, carrying a small basket for flowers. She wore a simple white dress, and her hair was tied back in a bun. She looked peaceful, content, completely unaware of the danger following her. Jade waited 2 minutes, then followed, keeping her distance, staying in the shadows. The path to Grandma Ruth's garden wound through thick woods and tall grass, eventually leading to a clearing near the swamp where wild roses and lavender grew. The air smelled of damp earth and moss. Birds were just beginning to sing. Grace walked slowly, humming a hymn, her basket swinging gently at her side. When Grace reached the garden, she knelt down near the rose bushes and closed her eyes, her lips moving in silent prayer. Jade watched from behind a tree, her heart pounding so loud she thought Grace might hear it. Her hands gripped the shovel tightly. Her palms were sweaty. Her breathing was fast and shallow. "Do it now," a voice in her head whispered. "Do it before you lose your nerve." Jade stepped out from behind the tree. She walked slowly, carefully, making no sound. Grace was still kneeling, still praying, still completely vulnerable. Jade raised the shovel high above her head. For one brief second, she hesitated. This was her sister, her twin, the person she had shared a womb with, shared a room with, shared a life with. But then she thought about Marcus, about the ring, about the applause, about always being second. And she swung. The shovel came down hard, hitting Grace on the back of the head with a sickening thud. Grace gasped, her eyes flying open in shock and pain. She tried to turn around, tried to see who had hit her, but her vision blurred. She reached out weakly, her mouth opening as if to say something, but no words came. Then she collapsed forward into the dirt, unconscious, blood trickling from her head. Jade stood there, frozen, the shovel still in her hands. She stared at Grace's motionless body, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Oh, God," Jade whispered. "Oh, God, what did I do?" But there was no turning back now. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. "No," Jade said firmly, her voice hardening. "No, I did what I had to do. She had everything. Now it's my turn." Jade grabbed Grace by the arms and started dragging her deeper into the swamp, away from the path, away from anywhere someone might find her. Grace was dead weight, her head lolling to the side, her white dress getting covered in mud and grass stains. Jade's arms burned with effort, but she kept going, dragging her sister further and further into the thick vegetation where the trees grew so close together that sunlight barely touched the ground. Finally, Jade found a spot. A small clearing surrounded by dense bushes and cypress trees, their roots twisting up out of the dark water like skeletal fingers. The ground was soft here, damp from the swamp, perfect for digging. Jade dropped Grace's body and grabbed the shovel. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to keep moving. She started digging, throwing dirt over her shoulder, digging deeper and deeper until she had carved out a shallow grave just big enough for a body. Then she rolled Grace into it. Grace lay there, face up, eyes closed, blood matted in her hair. For a moment, Jade thought she saw Grace's chest move, thought she saw her breathe. But she pushed the thought away. "It's done," Jade whispered. "It's over." She started shoveling dirt back into the hole, covering Grace's feet, her legs, her torso, her arms, her face. Within minutes, Grace was completely buried. Nothing but a mound of disturbed earth marking where she lay. Jade stood there, breathing hard, staring at the grave. Her hands were covered in dirt. Her clothes were filthy. Her heart was racing. But she felt something else, too. Relief. "She's gone," Jade whispered. "And now I can be her." She wiped her hands on her pants, picked up the shovel, and turned to leave. But she didn't notice the eyes watching her from high above. Deshaun Carter was a 28-year-old fisherman who had grown up in Blessington. Every morning before dawn, he would head out to the bayou to check his fishing traps and nets. He knew every inch of that swamp. That morning, he had climbed up into a tall cypress tree to tie a new rope for one of his traps. He was about 30 feet up, hidden by the thick branches and Spanish moss, when he heard footsteps. He looked down and saw a woman dragging something through the brush. At first, he thought maybe she was dragging a deer or some kind of animal. But as she got closer, he realized with horror that it was a person. A woman, unconscious or worse. Deshaun's blood ran cold. He watched, frozen, as the woman started digging. His mind raced. Should I yell? Should I climb down and stop her? But something told him to stay hidden, to watch, to be a witness. When the woman rolled the body into the grave and started covering it with dirt, Deshaun's hands gripped the tree branch so hard his knuckles turned white. "She's burying someone alive," he whispered to himself in horror. "Oh God, she's burying someone." He tried to see the woman's face, but she was too far away, and the light was still dim. All he could tell was that she was young, black, and moving with frantic purpose. When she finally finished and walked away, checking over her shoulder repeatedly, Deshaun waited until she was completely out of sight. Then he climbed down as fast as he could, his heart pounding. He ran to the grave and dropped to his knees. The dirt was fresh, loose. He started digging with his bare hands, throwing dirt aside frantically. "Please don't be dead. Please don't be dead," he prayed over and over. His fingers hit fabric, then skin. He dug faster, uncovering a face. It was a young woman, her eyes closed, dirt covering her nose and mouth. Deshaun scooped the dirt away from her face and pressed his ear to her chest. There was a heartbeat. Faint, but there. "She's alive," Deshaun shouted to no one. "Thank you, Jesus, she's alive." He dug her out completely, lifting her limp body out of the grave. She was still breathing, but barely. Blood was caked in her hair from a head wound. Deshaun knew he couldn't take her to the hospital without questions being asked, questions that might get her killed if whoever buried her found out she was alive. He needed help, and he knew exactly where to go. Miss Evangeline was a legend in Blessington. She was a spiritual healer who lived deep in the bayou in a small cabin that seemed to appear and disappear depending on who was looking for it. People said she was over 90 years old, though no one knew for sure. She had delivered babies, cured sicknesses, and removed curses for 3 generations. If anyone could save this woman, it was Miss Evangeline. Deshawn carried the unconscious woman through the swamp, his arms burning with effort. He called out as he walked, "Miss Evangeline! Miss Evangeline, I need help!" The bayou was silent except for the sound of frogs and crickets. Then, as if by magic, the cabin appeared through the morning mist. The door opened before Deshawn even reached it. Miss Evangeline stood in the doorway, a small, ancient woman with silver hair wrapped in a blue headscarf and eyes that seemed to see straight through to your soul. "Bring her inside," she said calmly, as if she had been expecting him. "Quickly now. Death is circling her like a hungry dog." Deshawn laid the woman on a low cot covered with clean white sheets. Miss Evangeline moved with surprising speed for her age, her wrinkled hands working efficiently. She examined the head wound, checked the woman's pulse, looked into her eyes. "She was struck from behind," Miss Evangeline said quietly, "then buried alive. But the ancestors were watching. They kept her breath going just long enough." She went to her shelves, which were lined with hundreds of jars filled with herbs, roots, oils, and dried plants. She mixed a poultice for the head wound, brewed a strong tea to help with the internal trauma, and began chanting in a language Deshawn didn't recognize. For hours, Miss Evangeline worked, cleaning the wound, forcing medicine between the woman's lips, praying over her with ancient words passed down through generations. Finally, as the sun reached its peak in the sky, the woman's eyes fluttered open. She gasped, coughing, her hand flying to her head. Where am I?" she whispered weakly. Miss Evangeline leaned close, her voice gentle. "You're safe, child. You're in my home. You were buried, but this young man pulled you out. The ancestors sent him." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Jade," she whispered. "My sister. Jade did this to me." Miss Evangeline and Deshawn exchanged glances. "Your sister tried to bury you?" Deshawn asked in shock. The woman nodded weakly. "We're twins, identical twins. Her name is Jade. Mine is Grace. She hit me. I was praying, and she hit me from behind. Then everything went black." Miss Evangeline's face grew serious. "Twins born under divided skies," she muttered. "I should have known. Child, your sister didn't just try to kill you. She tried to steal your destiny. And if we don't stop her, she will walk in your place, and no one will know the difference." Grace tried to sit up, but pain shot through her head, and she fell back. "Marcus," she whispered. "My fiancé. He doesn't know." "No one knows what she's done." Deshawn stepped forward. "Miss Grace, I saw everything. I can testify to what your sister did. But first, you need to heal. You're too weak to go anywhere right now." Miss Evangeline nodded. "He's right. You will stay here with me. I will heal your body and strengthen your spirit. When you're ready, destiny will lead you home. But not before." Grace closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "She really tried to kill me," she whispered in disbelief. "My own sister." Miss Evangeline took her hand gently. "Jealousy is a demon, child, and it's been living in your sister for a very long time." Meanwhile, back in Blessington, Jade was putting her plan into motion. She had gone straight to the river to wash the dirt and blood off her hands and clothes. Then she ran home, snuck in through the back door, and went straight to Grace's room. She stripped off her dirty clothes and put on one of Grace's dresses, a soft yellow sundress that Grace loved to wear. She sat at Grace's vanity and studied her own reflection. "I am Grace now," Jade whispered to herself. She practiced Grace's soft smile. She practiced the way Grace tilted her head when she listened to people. She practiced Grace's gentle voice. "Hi, Mama," she said sweetly to her reflection. "Good morning, Marcus," she said with a shy smile. Over and over she practiced until it felt natural. Then she styled her hair exactly the way Grace always wore it, parted to the side with a single braid running along the crown. She put on Grace's favorite lotion, the one that smelled like vanilla and lavender. She even put on Grace's small gold cross necklace that Grandma Ruth had given her. When Jade finally looked in the mirror, she saw Grace staring back at her. "Perfect," she whispered. "I am her." Jade took a deep breath and walked out of the bedroom. Mama Lorraine was in the kitchen, humming as she made breakfast. "Good morning, Mama," Jade said softly, using Grace's voice. Mama Lorraine turned around with a bright smile. "Good morning, baby. You're up early. How'd you sleep?" Jade smiled gently. "Like an angel." But the moment Mama Lorraine hugged her, she felt something wrong. Jade's body was tense, stiff. Grace always melted into her mother's hugs. This felt different. Mama Lorraine pulled back slightly and looked into Jade's eyes. "You okay, baby? You feel different this morning?" Jade's heart skipped a beat. "I'm fine, Mama. Just excited about the wedding planning." Mama Lorraine smiled, but doubt flickered in her eyes. "Where's your sister? Is Jade still sleeping?" Jade had prepared for this question. "Oh, Jade left real early this morning. She said something about visiting Aunt Clara in Memphis for a few days. She wanted to get away and clear her head." Mama Lorraine frowned. "Memphis? She didn't mention that to me yesterday. That's strange. She usually tells me when she's going somewhere." Jade shrugged casually, but inside she was panicking. "You know Jade, Mama. She's spontaneous. She probably decided last minute." Mama Lorraine nodded slowly, but her frown deepened. Something wasn't adding up. Jade was impulsive, yes, but she always told her mother where she was going. Always. And why would she leave right after Grace's engagement? That didn't make sense. Throughout the day, Mama Lorraine kept watching Grace closely. Every movement, every word, every gesture felt slightly off. When Grace walked, she had a certain rhythm, a gentle sway. This woman walked faster, harder. When Grace laughed, it was soft and genuine. This woman's laugh was forced, tight. And her eyes, Lord have mercy, her eyes were different. Colder, sharper. That evening, Marcus came by to take Grace out to dinner. He knocked on the door with flowers in his hand and a bright smile on his face. "There's my beautiful fiancé," he said warmly when Jade opened the door. She smiled and took the flowers. "Thank you, Marcus." "They're beautiful." But when he leaned in to kiss her, she stiffened slightly. Marcus noticed immediately but didn't say anything. During dinner at a nice restaurant an hour outside of Blessington, Marcus kept studying her. Something was off. Grace usually talked easily, laughing at his jokes, asking about his day, sharing stories about her students. But tonight, Grace was quiet, distracted, almost cold. "You okay, baby?" Marcus asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You seem different tonight." Jade forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired." Marcus nodded, but he didn't believe her. The woman sitting across from him looked like Grace, sounded like Grace, but didn't feel like Grace. It was like hugging a mannequin. When he drove her home that night and tried to kiss her goodnight, she turned her head so his lips landed on her cheek instead. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I have a headache." Marcus watched her walk into the house, confused and troubled. Something was very wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what. That night he lay in bed in his hotel room, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had changed. Maybe she's just nervous about the wedding, he told himself. Maybe she's stressed. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. The next day, Mama Lorraine's worry turned into full panic. She had called Aunt Clara in Memphis to check on Jade, and Aunt Clara said she hadn't seen or heard from Jade in months. "Lorraine, what are you talking about? Jade's not here. Is something wrong?" Mama Lorraine's hand shook as she held the phone. "She's not there, but Grace said she went to visit you." Mama Lorraine hung up and immediately went to find Grace. She found her in the backyard, hanging laundry on the line. "Grace," Mama Lorraine said firmly, "I just spoke to Aunt Clara. Jade never went to Memphis. Where is your sister? And don't you dare lie to me." Jade's hands froze on the clothesline. Her heart pounded. Maybe I misunderstood where she said she was going," Jade stammered. "Maybe she went somewhere else." Mama Lorraine stepped closer, her voice rising. "Grace Lorraine Robinson, I have been your mother for 26 years. I know when you're lying to me. Now tell me the truth. Where is Jade?" Before Jade could answer, James came running around the side of the house, his face pale. Lorraine, people are gathering at the house. They're saying Jade is missing. No one has seen her since yesterday morning." Mama Lorraine's legs went weak. She grabbed the clothesline to steady herself. "Missing? Oh, Lord, Jesus, no!" Within an hour, the entire town knew. Jade Robinson was missing. No one had seen her. No one knew where she was. A search party was quickly organized. Men grabbed flashlights and machetes. Women prepared food and water. The sheriff, a middle-aged man named Sheriff Davis, took charge. "We'll search the woods, the bayou, the roads. If she's out there, we'll find her." Grace stood in the yard, watching everything unfold, her face carefully arranged into an expression of worry. But inside, she was terrified. They can't find her, Jade thought desperately. No one can find her because if they do, everything is over. Pastor Williams approached her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Grace. We'll find your sister. I'm sure she's fine." Jade nodded, fake tears forming in her eyes. "I hope so, Pastor. I hope so." But that night, as she lay in Grace's bed, pretending to sleep, guilt and fear began to claw at her mind. She kept seeing Grace's face, pale and covered in dirt. She kept hearing the sound of the shovel hitting her head. And worst of all, she kept feeling like someone was watching her. At 2 a.m., Jade woke up with a gasp. She had heard something. A tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the window. She sat up slowly, her heart racing. The tapping continued, steady and rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. Jade forced herself to get out of bed and walk to the window. She pulled back the curtains slowly. There was nothing there, just darkness and the reflection of her own face in the glass. But then the reflection changed. Instead of her own face, she saw Grace's face. Pale, dirt-smeared, eyes wide open, staring directly at her. Grace's lips moved in the reflection, forming words. "I'm coming home." Jade screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over the bed and falling hard on the floor. Mama Lorraine and James burst through the door. "What happened? What's wrong?" James shouted, turning on the light. Jade sat on the floor, trembling, pointing at the window. I saw. But when she looked again, there was nothing. Just her own reflection staring back. Mama Lorraine knelt beside her, touching her forehead. "Baby, you're burning up. You're sweating like you ran a marathon." She helped Jade back into bed. "You're having nightmares. The stress of Jade missing is getting to you." Jade nodded weakly, but she knew it wasn't a nightmare. That was real. Grace was alive. Somehow, impossibly, Grace was alive. And she was coming. The next 3 days were torture for Jade. Every time she looked in a mirror, she saw Grace's face instead of her own. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Grace's voice whispering, "I know what you did." Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound seemed like footsteps coming closer. She barely ate. She barely slept. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her hands shook constantly. People started noticing. "Grace, are you okay?" neighbors would ask. "You look sick." Even Marcus was concerned. "Baby, you need to see a doctor. You're not yourself." But Jade refused. How could she explain that she was being haunted by the sister she had buried alive? How could she tell anyone the truth without destroying herself? One afternoon, Jade was helping prepare for the wedding at the church. The women's auxiliary was decorating, hanging white flowers and ribbons everywhere. Jade stood at the front of the sanctuary, near the altar, trying to arrange a floral centerpiece. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The flowers kept falling. "Grace, honey, let me help you," Sister Margaret said kindly, reaching for the flowers. But the moment Sister Margaret's hand touched Jade's, she jerked back as if she'd been burned. Her eyes went wide. "Child," Sister Margaret whispered, staring at Jade with fear and confusion. "Your spirit, it feels wrong, dark." Jade's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Sister Margaret stepped back slowly, her hand going to the cross around her neck. "Something's not right with you. You don't feel like Grace. You feel like you're carrying death." Before Jade could respond, the church doors burst open with a loud bang that echoed through the sanctuary. Everyone turned. And there, standing in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun, was a figure in a simple white dress. The sunlight made it impossible to see her face clearly at first. But as she walked forward slowly, deliberately, her features became clear. It was Grace. Alive. Whole. Clean. Her head wound was healed thanks to Miss Evangeline's spiritual medicines. Her eyes were clear and focused. She walked down the aisle like a bride approaching the altar, but there was no joy in her expression. Only determination. Behind her walked Deshawn and Miss Evangeline, both serving as witnesses to the truth. The entire church fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Women gasped. Men stepped back. Sister Margaret's mouth fell open. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "There's 2 of them." Everyone's eyes darted between the 2 identical women. One standing at the altar in a yellow dress. One walking down the aisle in white. Mama Lorraine grabbed the pew in front of her to keep from fainting. Her voice came out as a choked whisper. "Grace, Jade? I don't understand. Marcus, who had been in the pastor's office going over ceremony details, emerged into the sanctuary and froze. His eyes went from one twin to the other, confusion and horror spreading across his face. "What's happening?" he asked. "What's going on?" The Grace in white stopped about 10 feet away from the altar. She stared directly at Jade, and Jade stared back, her face drained of all color, her entire body trembling. "Hello, sister," Grace said calmly. Her voice was soft but carried through the entire church. "Surprised to see me?" Jade's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her legs felt like they might give out. Grace turned to address the congregation. "My name is Grace Lorraine Robinson. I am the real Grace. The woman standing at the altar pretending to be me is my twin sister, Jade." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Grace continued, her voice steady. "4 days ago, my sister followed me to Grandma Ruth's garden. While I was praying, she struck me from behind with a shovel. Then she dragged me deep into the bayou and buried me alive." The church erupted. Women screamed. Men shouted. "That's impossible," someone yelled. "This can't be true." Jade found her voice finally, shrill and desperate. "She's lying. I'm Grace. She's Jade. She's trying to steal my life." But her voice lacked conviction. It shook with guilt and fear. Deshawn stepped forward, his voice loud and clear. "I'm Deshawn Carter. I witnessed everything. I was up in a cypress tree checking my traps when I saw this woman," he pointed at Jade, "dragging an unconscious body through the swamp. I watched her dig a grave. I watched her bury someone alive. After she left, I dug that person out. It was Grace. I took her to Miss Evangeline to save her life." Miss Evangeline stepped forward next, her ancient voice carrying weight and authority. "The girl speaks truth. I healed her. I saw the head wound, still fresh from where she was struck. I saw the dirt in her lungs from being buried. The ancestors confirmed it to me in visions. This child," she pointed at Grace, "carries light. That one," she pointed at Jade, "carries the shadow of attempted murder." Mama Lorraine walked slowly toward both girls, tears streaming down her face. She looked from one to the other, her mother's heart breaking. Both faces were identical, but a mother knows. She looked into Grace's eyes and saw peace, pain, and forgiveness. She looked into Jade's eyes and saw fear, guilt, and desperation. "Which one of you is my Grace?" Mama Lorraine whispered. Grace stepped forward and took her mother's hand gently. She began to sing, softly, the lullaby that Mama Lorraine had sung to both girls every night when they were children. "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." Her voice was pure, clear, unmistakable. It was Grace's voice, the voice that had sung in this church for 20 years. Mama Lorraine collapsed into Grace's arms, sobbing. My baby, you're alive." She held Grace tightly, then turned to look at Jade with horror and heartbreak. "Jade, is this true? Did you really try to kill your sister?" Jade's face crumpled. The weight of everything crashed down on her at once. She had been caught. There was no escape. No more pretending. The truth was standing right in front of everyone. Jade's voice broke. Tears poured down her face. "I didn't mean, she always had everything. Everything. Everyone loved her more. Everyone chose her." Her voice rose to a scream. The compliments, the respect, the perfect man. It was supposed to be me. Why wasn't it ever me? She grabbed her hair with both hands, her face twisted in anguish. I just wanted what she had. I just wanted to be seen. Marcus stepped back from Jade, disgust and betrayal written across his face. You tried to kill your own sister, your own twin? For what? A ring? A wedding? His voice shook with anger. I would never, could never, love someone capable of that. You're not Grace. You could never be Grace. Jade reached for him desperately. Marcus, please, I love you. I can be good for you. Better than her. But Marcus turned away from her completely and walked to Grace. He looked at her with relief and concern. Grace? The real Grace? She nodded, tears in her eyes. It's me. Marcus. He took her hand gently. I knew something was wrong. I felt it. You didn't feel like yourself these past few days because it wasn't you. He turned back to Jade with cold eyes. I don't know how I could have been fooled, but I'm grateful the truth came out. Pastor William stepped forward, his voice heavy with sorrow. Jade Robinson, what you have done is an abomination. Attempted murder. Identity theft. You tried to bury your own flesh and blood. Sheriff Davis, who had been standing in the back observing everything, walked forward with handcuffs. Jade Robinson, you're under arrest for attempted murder and fraud. Jade's legs gave out. She fell to her knees, sobbing hysterically. No, please, please don't take me. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. She looked at Grace desperately. Sister, please, tell them not to take me. We're twins. We're supposed to protect each other. Please. Grace walked over to Jade slowly and knelt down in front of her. For a moment, she just looked at her sister, this person who shared her face but not her heart. Jade, Grace said softly, I forgive you. I forgive you because holding on to anger and hate would make me just like you. But forgiveness doesn't mean there are no consequences. What you did was evil, and you have to face justice for it. Jade grabbed Grace's dress desperately. I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted to be you. You don't know what it's like, always being in someone's shadow, always being second. Grace's eyes filled with tears. You were never in my shadow, Jade. You put yourself there. I loved you. I always loved you. I shared everything with you, but you couldn't see it because jealousy blinded you. She stood up as Sheriff Davis helped Jade to her feet and put the handcuffs on her wrists. I hope one day you find peace, sister. Real peace. The kind that doesn't depend on being someone else. As the sheriff led Jade out of the church, she screamed and cried, begging for mercy, begging for forgiveness, begging for another chance. But the doors closed behind her, and she was gone. The congregation sat in stunned silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Mama Lorraine broke down completely, falling into James's arms. My daughters, both my daughters. One tried to kill the other. How did I miss this? How did I not see the darkness in Jade's heart? Grandma Ruth's old friend, an elderly woman named Sister Thompson, spoke up from the back. Lorraine, you didn't miss anything. Some people carry a darkness that no amount of love can fix. You prayed for her. You tried to help her. But jealousy is a demon that only the person themselves can fight. And Jade, she fed that demon instead of fighting it. Grace spent the next few hours answering questions from the sheriff, giving her statement, showing him the place where she was buried. Deshawn took them to the exact spot. The grave was still there, the disturbed earth a silent witness to attempted murder. The sheriff took photos, collected evidence, and promised Grace that justice would be served. "She's going away for a long time," he said. "Attempted murder, even of a family member, carries serious consequences." The trial happened 3 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. Deshawn's eyewitness testimony, Miss Evangeline's medical documentation of Grace's injuries, the grave site, Jade's own confession in the church that day. Jade's lawyer tried to argue temporary insanity, claiming that years of jealousy and mental illness had driven her to an act she wouldn't normally commit. But the jury didn't buy it. After 3 days of testimony, the jury came back with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, fraud. The judge sentenced Jade to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15. Jade stood in the courtroom, handcuffed, wearing an orange jumpsuit, tears streaming down her face as the sentence was read. She looked at Grace one last time, mouthing the words, "I'm sorry." Grace sat in the front row next to Marcus, holding his hand. She nodded at Jade, acknowledging the apology, but said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The bailiff led Jade away, and she disappeared through a door, beginning a sentence that would take away the best years of her life. Mama Lorraine cried quietly, mourning not just for what Jade had done, but for the daughter she had lost to her own demons. Life slowly returned to normal in Blessington, though nothing would ever be quite the same. The town talked about the Robinson twins for months. It became the story people told their children as a warning about the dangers of jealousy and envy. "Never let jealousy take root in your heart," parents would say. "Look what happened to the Robinson girl. She destroyed her own life trying to steal someone else's." Grace went back to teaching, though she took a few weeks off first to heal, both physically and emotionally. The children were overjoyed to have her back. "Miss Grace, we missed you so much," they shouted when she returned. She hugged them all, grateful to be alive, grateful for second chances. Marcus supported her through everything, never pressuring her, just being there when she needed him. 6 months after the trial, on a beautiful spring day, Grace and Marcus got married. The ceremony was at Blessington Baptist Church, the same church where the truth had been revealed. This time there were no interruptions, no drama, just joy, love, and celebration. Grace walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, her face glowing with genuine happiness. Mama Lorraine cried tears of joy and grief, grateful her daughter was alive, but heartbroken about her other daughter sitting in a prison cell. As Grace and Marcus exchanged vows, she couldn't help but think about Jade. She wondered if her sister was watching the news coverage, if she was thinking about what could have been if she had just been happy for Grace instead of consumed by jealousy. Grace said a silent prayer for Jade, hoping that somehow, in prison, her sister would find the peace she had been searching for her whole life. The reception was beautiful. People danced, ate, laughed, and celebrated. Deshawn was there, honored as a hero for saving Grace's life. Miss Evangeline was there too, sitting in a place of honor, her ancient eyes watching everything with satisfaction. "Destiny always wins," she said to anyone who would listen. "You can fight it, you can run from it, but destiny always wins." As the sun set over Blessington that evening, Grace and Marcus drove away to start their honeymoon, tin cans rattling behind the car, people cheering and waving. Grace looked back at the town that had raised her, the community that had saved her, and she felt overwhelming gratitude. She had been buried alive, left for dead, but she had survived. And not just survived, but thrived. Meanwhile, 200 miles away, Jade sat in her prison cell, staring at the concrete wall. She had a small photo pinned up, one of her and Grace when they were children, both smiling, both innocent, before jealousy had poisoned everything. She touched the photo gently, tears rolling down her face. "I'm sorry, Grace," she whispered to the picture. "I'm so sorry." But sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't give her back the years she had lost. Sorry didn't erase what she had done. Jade had learned the hardest lesson of all. You can bury a person, but you can't bury the truth. You can steal someone's face, but you can't steal their destiny. And jealousy, if you feed it long enough, will eventually bury you instead. Years passed. Grace and Marcus built a beautiful life together. They had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Grace continued teaching, touching hundreds of young lives. She became a deacon at the church and started a mentorship program for young women, teaching them about self-worth, sisterhood, and the dangers of comparison. Her story inspired many, and she never hid from it. She owned it, used it, transformed it into something meaningful. Every year, on the anniversary of the day she was buried and rescued, Grace would visit Miss Evangeline's cabin in the bayou. The old healer eventually passed away at the age of 103, but her cabin remained, preserved by the community, as a historical site. Grace would sit there quietly, saying prayers of gratitude, remembering the woman who had saved her life. Deshawn became a close family friend, someone Grace and Marcus trusted completely. He never let them forget that miracles were real because he had witnessed one himself. After serving 15 years, Jade became eligible for parole. Grace received a letter from the parole board asking if she wanted to speak at the hearing. Marcus didn't want her to go. "You don't owe her anything," he said. "She tried to kill you." But Grace felt differently. "She's still my sister," Grace said quietly. "And I need to face her one more time. Not for her, for me." The parole hearing was held in a cold, institutional room with fluorescent lights and gray walls. Jade was brought in wearing prison clothes, her hair now streaked with gray even though she was only 41. 15 years in prison had aged her. She looked tired, broken, but there was something different in her eyes, something softer. When she saw Grace sitting in the audience, Jade's eyes filled with tears. Grace was called to speak first. She walked to the front calmly, took a deep breath, and addressed the parole board. 15 years ago, my twin sister tried to kill me because she was jealous of my life. She hit me with a shovel and buried me alive in the bayou. If not for a witness and a miracle, I would be dead. The room was silent. What she did was evil, unforgivable by some standards. But I forgave her a long time ago because holding on to hate was poisoning me, not her. Grace turned to look at Jade directly. "I don't know if 15 years is enough time to pay for attempted murder. I don't know if she's truly changed. But I do know that everyone deserves a chance at redemption if they're willing to do the hard work. If this board grants her parole, I won't stand in the way. But I also won't forget what happened. And I will never allow her into my life or near my children." Then it was Jade's turn to speak. She stood slowly, her chains rattling. Her voice was hoarse from crying. I don't deserve forgiveness, I know that. What I did to my sister was evil, and I've spent every single day of the last 15 years regretting it. In prison, I've had a lot of time to think about why I did it. Years of therapy, years of reflection. I was sick, mentally sick. Consumed by jealousy that started when we were born and grew until it turned me into a monster. Jade's voice broke. I wanted to be Grace so badly that I was willing to kill her and steal her life. But the moment I buried her, I realized I had buried myself. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was haunted by what I'd done. And when she walked into that church alive, I felt relief. Relief that she was alive, and relief that my nightmare was ending. She looked at Grace with genuine remorse. Grace, I know you'll never trust me again. I don't expect you to. But I want you to know that you saved my life by surviving. You gave me a chance to face what I'd become. Thank you for that. The parole board deliberated for 2 hours. In the end, they granted Jade parole with strict conditions. She would have to continue therapy, check in with a parole officer weekly, stay at least 500 feet away from Grace and her family, and complete 1,000 hours of community service. Jade accepted every condition gratefully. When she was released 3 weeks later, she moved to a different state, got a job at a grocery store, and lived a quiet, simple life. She never contacted Grace again, respecting the boundary that had been set. But every year on Grace's birthday, Jade would light a candle and say a prayer of gratitude that her sister was still alive. It was the least she could do, the only thing she could do. And slowly, year by year, Jade worked on forgiving herself, the hardest task of all. Back in Blessington, life continued. Grace's children grew up hearing the story of their mother's survival, a story that taught them about resilience, forgiveness, and the power of truth. Your mama, Marcus would tell them, was buried alive and came back from the dead. That's how strong she is. The children would look at Grace with awe, seeing her not just as their mother, but as a warrior. On Grace's 50th birthday, the town of Blessington held a celebration in her honor. They renamed the community center the Grace Robinson Center for Women's Empowerment. Grace stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, people who had watched her journey from attempted murder victim to community leader. 24 years ago, she began, my sister tried to bury me. But what she didn't know was that you can't bury destiny. You can't bury truth. And you definitely can't bury someone who has a purpose to fulfill. The crowd erupted in applause. Grace smiled, tears in her eyes. I stand here today not because I'm special, but because I'm blessed. Blessed to have survived. Blessed to have been saved by Deshawn and Miss Evangeline. Blessed to have a community that supported me. And blessed to have learned that forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of hate. She paused. My sister is living her own life now, carrying her own burden. I wish her peace. I wish her healing. But I will never forget what she did, and I will never stop sharing this story so others can learn from it. Before we end this story, if you've made it this far, I want you to do something for me. Take a moment and hit that subscribe button. Stories like this, stories about real human struggles, karma, and justice, need to be heard. And if this story touched you in any way, leave a comment below telling me what you learned. Your engagement helps this channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you powerful stories like Grace's. Now, let's finish this story. That night, Grace went home to her family. Her children, now teenagers, asked her how the celebration was. "It was beautiful," Grace said, hugging them close. Marcus wrapped his arms around all of them, and they stood there in their kitchen, a family built on love, truth, and second chances. Grace looked around at her life, at everything she had built, and she felt overwhelming gratitude. "I was buried," she whispered, "but I rose." And the lesson? The lesson that Grace taught everyone who heard her story was simple but powerful. Jealousy is a poison that kills from the inside out. You can bury a person, but you cannot bury their destiny. What you do in darkness will always come to light. And the hardest prison to escape isn't one made of bars and concrete. It's the prison of regret you build yourself when you let envy control your actions. Grace lived the rest of her life as a testament to survival, forgiveness, and purpose. She wrote a book about her experience that became a bestseller, helping thousands of people who struggled with jealousy, comparison, and family trauma. She traveled around the country speaking at churches, schools, and conferences, telling her story over and over again because she knew it had power. Power to change hearts. Power to save lives. Power to prevent another sister from making the same mistake Jade had made. Jade, now in her 60s, lived quietly until her death at age 67. She never married, never had children, never built the life she had once envied. In her final days, lying in a hospital bed, she asked for one thing: to see a photo of Grace. The nurse pulled one up on a phone, showing Grace at a speaking event, smiling, surrounded by people who loved her. Jade stared at the photo for a long time, tears streaming down her face. "She's beautiful," Jade whispered. "She always was." Those were her last words. When Grace heard about Jade's death, she didn't cry. She had cried all her tears for her sister years ago. Instead, she sat quietly in her prayer room and lit a candle. "Rest in peace, Jade," she whispered. "I hope you finally found the peace you were looking for." And with that, Grace closed that chapter of her life forever, carrying the lessons but releasing the pain. The town of Blessington never forgot the Robinson twins. Their story was told for generations, a cautionary tale about jealousy and a triumphant tale about survival. Children grew up knowing that Grace Robinson was buried alive and lived to tell about it. They learned that destiny cannot be stolen, that truth always surfaces, and that jealousy, if left unchecked, will destroy not just others, but yourself. And so the story ends where it began. In the Louisiana bayou, where the earth once tried to swallow Grace, but spit her back out because her purpose was not yet complete. Where the trees still stand as witnesses to attempted murder and miraculous rescue. Where the swamp waters still whisper the tale of two sisters. Two faces, two hearts, but only one destiny that could never be buried. If this story moved you, impacted you, or taught you something, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that bell icon so you never miss another powerful story. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's struggling with jealousy, someone who's comparing their life to others, someone who needs to understand that your destiny is your own, and trying to steal someone else's will only bury you. Drop a comment below and tell me what lesson you're taking away from Grace and Jade's story. I read every single comment, and your words inspire me to keep creating content that matters. Remember, jealousy is a thief that steals your joy, your peace, and your future. Don't let it win. Be grateful for your own path, celebrate others' success, and understand that there's enough blessing in this world for everyone. You don't have to bury someone else to rise. You just have to be true to yourself and trust that your time will come. This has been the story of the twin she buried. A story of attempted murder, miraculous survival, and the unbreakable power of destiny. Thank you for watching until the very end. Until the next story, remember, what you plant in darkness will grow in the light. Choose your seeds wisely.